Hey guys, welcome to my super casual Never series where I discuss each episode before the next one launches. This week we're going to talk about episode 4. And just in case anyone doesn't know, The Nevers was created, produced, written by Joss Whedon. Episode 4 I don't believe was actually directed by him. I believe this is the first one that he had stepped away from. But regardless, Joss Whedon is a little bit of a troubling character. There's some controversy going around about how he behaves on set. So if you're interested in finding more information about that, I actually had a full conversation with Daniel, which I'll link in the iCard above. But just, be aware that there is some controversy about how Joss Whedon treats people, and there is a larger conversation going on about whether or not anyone should watch his shows or support his work because of it. The other thing I guess I should address is usually I do these as meal prep, but I don't actually have any vegetables to meal prep. So I still want this to be a kind of casual, fun conversation. You've got me first thing in the morning, just trying to wake up, admiring the sunlight coming in, and just enjoying my day. And I guess one more thing that you guys should know is that episode 4, I had a lot of thoughts going into it based off of my dislike for the first 2 episodes and my enjoyment of the 3rd episode. It made me turn inward and start really thinking. I know these conversations are supposed to be really casual, really off the cuff, and almost nothing I do is off the cuff. I'm almost always thinking about it for a while before I talk to anyone in person or on camera about it. But just so you guys know, this is even less off the cuff than usual. I've got a page front and back here of notes, even more here of notes. So there's been nothing but The Nevers as a larger series thoughts and comparing it. First I tried to compare it to Buffy, and eventually I settled on comparing it to The Dollhouse. I wanted to compare it to Buffy because it's a larger ensemble female-led cast, but that's really where the similarities between those two things begin and end. The whole, what is the touch? How did the touch come to be? Who's trying to get them? Are the people who created them trying to get them? Is England trying to get them? Are both of them trying to get them? It's a big mystery, a big whodunit solving situation. So to me, that was more Dollhousey. Dollhouse has both that sci-fi element and it has the same mystery. Yes, there are these people who we erase memories and send them out to do tasks. Who is this larger corporation? What are their goals? What are the points of all the people who hire these folks? It's got the same sort of question, multiple points situation going on. It even has a point-for-point malady situation going on. In Dollhouse, they have Alpha, the escaped doll who has all his memories in his mind, is crazy and homicidal and very dangerous. And here in the Nevers we have Malady. She's escaped the insane asylum. She has some kind of power. She's very strong. She kills a lot of people and is highly dangerous too. I see Mrs. Bidlow as a stand-in for the lady who's the head of corporate in the Dollhouse. There's a lot of one-to-one parallels, I think, between these two shows. I've already given you over a half hour of pets. And I've fed you, and I've watered you, and I've taken you out, and you're still being so demanding. Is it just because I'm sitting and talking in the morning? One of the major criticisms of the Dollhouse was that it was too slow. People didn't like that slow burn at all. And because they didn't enjoy that, Josh said, fine, we won't do that this time. It'll just be bam, here's all the crap. It's right in front of your face. Figure out what you like. Obviously, I don't prefer that way. I did enjoy the slow burn of Dollhouse, but I don't actually think it is a situation where the young kids today don't like slow burns. I think it's literally a reaction to the criticism of Dollhouse as something that Josh knew people would be getting as an episode per week and would be going to the forums and speculating on. He's always had a really rapid fan base. We've always been together in forums and stuff. I can remember when Buffy and Angel was a thing, being on LiveJournal. This has always been a thing people have done. Joss has only spent more time in Comic Cons and conventions dedicated to these Spanish people. He really knows how we think, how we get together, what we like to do in between episodes. And one of the things we love to do is we love to speculate about what the little different things we saw mean and what other characters are going to figure it out, how they're going to react, the whole 9 yards. Giving the audience information that the characters don't have takes on a whole new level of subterfuge, because now you want to give the audience information information that the characters don't have to misdirect the audience and misdirect fan theory. And that's actually kind of interesting. It's a new level of interaction. It probably loses some of its charm when you're not watching it live, but as far as like a weekly release date goes for an hour-long story, this is a wonderful way to engage your fans. And for me in particular, it's very interesting. This kind of storytelling wouldn't work in a book, it wouldn't work in a movie, and it wouldn't work in like a bingeable Netflix drop either. So all of that to me makes this an interesting model to observe and an interesting evolution of what Joss has traditionally done in TV shows. The Nevers is in a very special and unique place for me because it was originally produced, directed, and written by Joss Whedon. Like, if I had watched the first 2 episodes of a show by almost any other showrunner and they'd been as bad as the first 2 seasons of The Nevers were, I would never have come back for episode 3. So that's something I think that's worth talking about as far as like debut authors, debut directors, and even established directors and authors, the kind of shows that can or can't produce based off of the leeway and grace an audience will give them. And I do think the Joss Whedon controversy moving forward is going to really affect what he can and can't do. I don't know that he's ever going to be given as much grace and leeway to slow start a story and improve it going forward as he has been in this show. So I guess we should talk a little bit about what happened in episode 4 proper. It was a fine episode. It all made sense based off of episode 3. The Touched are really concerned about solving Mary's murder. I don't really like Detective Mundy. Like, I don't dislike him at this point in time. I just don't find his character compelling. And they keep giving us more information and details about him, which makes it clear that he's going to be a larger character. His relationship with the pagan sex cult guy is going to go someplace. I'm not thrilled about it. His backstory about being a boxer and having some kind of like seedy connections is probably going to go someplace. The only thing interesting about Mundy is he's going to be a legal connection for the Nevers. I'm kind of hoping that the female reporter is going to end up on their side as well. And then the lady who can get confessions out of people could go with her and she could create true and scandalous news stories. I just think that would be fun. But talking about characters that remind me of other people, the female reporter reminds me a lot of the female reporter from Harry Potter, and also reminds me a little bit of the Hunger Games Effie Trinket, the woman who guides Katniss and Peeta around. So I just feel like she's not a very unique character. Like, I'm looking forward to her participating more in the story. I didn't see her and think like, oh, she's novel and interesting, and I am immediately drawn in by her. None of these characters have taken me that way, and I feel like a lot of people are talking about how novel and interesting the characters are, and I'm just not feeling that way. I was really glad to see the first character that we saved in episode 1 who speaks a bunch of languages has a point here in episode 4, and I can see that she might have a point going forward. When she was introduced to us, I thought of her as like, I don't know, a golden talisman or like the thing that Indiana Jones collects in the first movie that never plays back in the story and that we don't really care about. It's just to show that Indiana Jones is cool. And in this case, when we collected that girl, it's just to show that Amalia knows how to fight. I like how episode 4 starts drawing me further into Amalia's character. She gives this really strange speech to Penance about how she's been dropped into a world that she doesn't really know what to do with, and how now she's sort of stuck here and doesn't know what her place is or how to get back. All of that's interesting because the way that she phrases it and the issues she brings up with Victorian London would have been a problem anywhere in the world at that time. So that's really supporting Reddit's alien theory, which is a thing that I've been dismissing, even though there's some kind of like spaceship steampunky thing going on. But at this point in time, I have to wonder if it is. And then I have to wonder about exactly how that alien invasion is going. Is it just like Amalia, her body was vacated at the time the touch came down, that she has an alien passenger? Or is everyone touched to have an alien passenger and they're co-sharing consciousness and slowly becoming more aware of each other? This show has given me a surprising amount of Animorphs vibes, between Crow Boy, me thinking that he'll eventually transform into a crow, and now the aliens cohabitating in your head is very like Yerk-like. And I guess It's not really 100% clear they're humans. I mean, it's not really clear that they're aliens. It's possible that Amalia is a woman from the future. We haven't really established what the glowing thing in the sky was. All of us are assuming spaceship because it would be the most obvious. But given that this show has intentionally given us things for us to speculate about and then yanked the carpet under our assumption, it might be fair to say that it's not a spaceship and that it wouldn't be a spaceship because that's so obvious. I don't know what else it would be at this point in time, but it would be really neat to see that. So Amalia's growing layers, and also the fact that Amalia's relationships are becoming more complex is interesting to me. Like, how much does Penance know about Amalia? And what about Amalia and the Doctor's relationship? I've been assuming that Amalia and the Doctor know each other from the insane asylum where Amalia was an inmate, the Doctor was a doctor, and Bellatrix Lestrange lady was also an inmate. Or perhaps that Bellatrix Lestrange lady was an inmate, Amalia was her friend visiting, and the Doctor was a doctor there. I've assumed that's how those three know each other, but it's entirely possible that all three of them know each other from the spaceship or from the future or whatever the spaceship thing represents. And it also creates a lot of questions about the larger touch as well. Just how do they know each other? How are they connected? Are they all connected somehow? You know, a lot more questions come up in episode 4 that aren't solved, and I don't think intend to be solved by episode 6, which means we might never get a good answer for them. Also, the scene between the governor guy and Amalia was interesting. It's a good scene. I enjoyed it. I know that Amalia says he all but confessed, but that's not how I took their interaction. I took their interaction to be like him pointing her to Mrs. Bidlow, especially when he said, like, I'm not the person responsible. The person who is responsible is the woman who knew you were going to be there. There are a couple ways that could be interpreted. It could be him turning the blame back on Amalia because Amalia knew she was going to be there and should have known that she was in danger, right? Because she knew that they were being attacked, she just didn't know exactly how. Or it could have been the governor guy pointing to Lucy, which I think a lot of people have assumed, but I actually think it's him pointing to Mrs. Bidlow. I know I assumed in episode 3 that's what happened because she knew about Mary, and I talked about how that didn't make a ton of sense. It still doesn't make a ton of sense from a collection point, but it does make a lot of sense from like a fear standpoint. Like, if you want to be able to control the larger narrative of who the touched are in Victorian England, then you need people to be afraid of them and afraid of the potential violence just their presence does. Like, even if the touched person has a power that's completely inoffensive, like Mary's, or even possibly peaceful and good, them being near you puts you in danger because someone is trying to kill them. So I could see using that fear from the normal people for something. So even though it doesn't help Miss Bidlow collect the touched, it could help her control them or control the larger society, and that could be why she had that done. I found Malady getting caught being fine. I was glad that's not a full season of her just evading the police. I didn't like the violence with which she was caught, like the smacking sound and the blood. That was too much. That was way too intense, and I didn't like it. I think that's an HBO thing. It might also be a modern audience thing that, like, in general, the audience is more desensitized to violence, so you have to keep going further. But I am glad she's caught, and I'm glad that we're going to be able to interact with her safely in a cell. Maybe episode 5 will be like a flashback backstory for her. And I guess last we have to talk about Lucy's betrayal. I thought that was well executed. Her explanation as to why she betrayed the touch makes sense to me. She's afraid of herself and disgusted with herself, and therefore she is afraid and somewhat disgusted with the touch as a larger group. I'm not sure how Amalia made the jump that Lucy was the traitor. Like, she talks about it, but it wasn't enough for me personally to put that together. I was like a little bit surprised to find out she was a traitor. Obviously, I knew it was coming when the two of them went into the warehouse together, and when Lucy was so hesitant to open up the cargo, and especially when the cargo was rocks. I mean, all of that was self-explanatory once we got to that point. I know that everyone keeps saying that her and the governor guy are the two that are together. Lucy even says that Lord Masterson, I believe is his name, promised to give her a cure. But I still don't know that they're connected like that. This is probably like too much thinking But it just doesn't make sense to me that Lucy would have ever gone to Lord Matherson or that Lord Matherson would have ever found her. I just think it's all Mrs. Bidlow's doing, and that she has set up traps or has set things up in certain situations to make it appear like other people are moving things. Like, she's friends with Lord Matherson, so she could have met with Lucy in his office or had a man meet with Lucy in the office on behalf of Lord Matherson. There's just a lot that could be going on here, where Lucy thinks she's working for one person, but she's working with someone else. It's also possible that the Touched have someone who can affect memories or who can create illusions. And if there's someone like that working in the shadows, that could be a whole nother player. I also like the introduction of Nimble Jack. I want to see more about them. I love the flirtation with Bonfire Annie, and I hope the two of them get to work together because they had a lot of fun banter, they had some good chemistry, and I think their powers would work really well together. And isn't that part of what the larger episode is showing us, is that the Nevers' powers are all like pieces of a puzzle meant to work together? In this case, like, Mary's singing is supposed to work with Myrtle's language. The two of them together can send encoded messages and decode. Bonfire Annie's power could work with Nimble Jack's in a similar way. She can start the fires. He or she can create a bubble around the fires and contain them. You know, the two of them just working together seems like it would make sense and be fun. So overall, I think episode 4 was more like of a thoughtful episode, more continuing some of those storylines in episode 3, and also starting to let the audience know, like, hey, we intentionally gave you stuff to speculate on, stuff that's wrong, and now we're going to turn it on its head. So all that's like setting the viewer up for more fun going forward. And I'm excited to see how 5 and 6 do a little mini wrap up, and I'm hoping they'll get to keep going after that. So thanks for watching, and if you want something that's a little bit higher energy, more production, something that doesn't have just notes but has a whole computer outline dedicated to it, feel free to check out Wednesday's 7 p.m. videos. All of the stuff I look at is from a storytelling perspective. It could be a TV show, movie, or book, and it has a sci-fi fantasy vibe to it. If you enjoy, feel free to subscribe, leave a comment, let me know what your favorite part of the Nevers is, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!